Welcome to the very first episode of what I'm calling tank cleaning. Now, for those of you that don't know me, first of all, shame on you. I'm the legendary Sevach, and when I'm not running around doing a little of this, a little of that, football, weddings, art, running marathons, you name it, I'm also the producer for the Fish Tank Tales from the Deep podcast. If you haven't heard of that, buddy, climb out from under whatever rock you've been living under. The Fish Tank is where our guys Seth Levitt and the former first-rounder O.J. McDuffie sit down with Miami Dolphins legends, players, coaches, front office personnel, everybody, to give you the inside scoop on the franchise's wildest moments. Today's spotlight is on Kenny Stills. Now, Stills was in Miami during one of the most chaotic, whiplash-inducing stretches in Dolphins history. We're talking 3 head coaches in a short span. That's like changing pilots mid-flight 3 times. And Kenny, he got the full turbulence package. And he didn't even get a free bag of peanuts. Now, to borrow a line from John Dorsey when he talked about waking the sleeping giant in Cleveland, I'd say Kenny's Dolphins years were more like the giant was awake, but still grumpy, squinting and yelling, "Don't talk to me until I've had my coffee." Now, what makes this episode fascinating is we fans remember that era one way, but the guys in the locker room, their reality was a whole different animal. And Kenny gives us that rare inside view. But before we dive into his words, you need to understand the world that Kenny came from. This wasn't some rookie tossed into chaos from day one. He started with the New Orleans Saints, and not just any Saints. These were the fresh off a Super Bowl Saints, or at least, coupled to a few years prior. But they were still led by hardened vets, laser-focused pros who knew exactly what it took to win. That was Kenny's introduction into the NFL. Serious, professional championship caliber football. Then, he gets traded to Miami. Whole different planet. Let's hear what he had to say about the culture shock.
I had been, like you said, in a championship type of program with the Saints. They had come off a championship a couple years before I got there. Drew Brees, Marcus Colson, Jimmy Graham, all these dudes who were professionals, deep into their career and knew how to handle business. And so I fell in line when I got there. Everything that they did, I did. I knew that if I mimicked everything that they were doing, I had an opportunity to be a great. I had an opportunity to learn how to be a pro. And so when I got traded to Miami, I just, I couldn't, I don't know where I was mentally or emotionally, but I didn't feel the same type of juice in that locker room. I met Joe Philbin. He was always harping us about, we couldn't wear hoods in the meeting rooms. We couldn't have pockets in our shorts. And he was worried about all these little details. We'd be doing walkthrough and our foot had to be on the sideline. It just felt like middle school detention or something. I didn't feel like a professional athlete.
Now, what blew my mind about Kenny's comments is that they lined up exactly with something that I had spotted years earlier. My wife will tell you, I was glued to Hard Knocks back then when Miami was the featured team. And that was the offseason the Dolphins signed Chad Johnson. That's right, Ocho Cinco himself, who had just changed his name back to Chad Johnson. And man, from the camp footage, he looked locked in. Prime shape, explosive, ready to cook defensive backs like it was 2009 all over again. And then, boom, quite literally actually. Headlines: he gets arrested for allegedly headbutting his wife, the Dolphins cut him immediately, and just like that, Ocho Cinco's comeback story ended before it even began. Now here's the part that stuck with me. HBO showed Joe Philbin, Miami's head coach at the time, sitting Chad down to deliver the news. And Philbin's tone? Man, he sounded like he was lecturing a middle schooler who got caught chewing gum in class. I remember thinking to myself, this is the NFL, not Pop Warner.
For something bothers me, I got to be able to come talking.
Okay.
And you got people saying,
Okay.
if you got a problem, you should come to my office and say, Joe, this, and that. I don't have any problem.
What the hell is this guy doing? Fast forward to Kenny's interview. And what does he say? That being in that locker room under Joe Philbin felt like being treated exactly like kids. Boom, confirmation, I wasn't crazy. And what I saw on TV, he was living in real time. And that right there shows how messy and transitional Miami was. Philbin was brought in to mold Tannehill into Aaron Rodgers 2.0. Then Adam Gase comes in, and suddenly the mission is to turn Tannehill into Peyton Manning. So basically, Tannehill got passed around like some sort of quarterback Frankenstein project, which brings us to Gase. Now, Adam Gase is one of the most polarizing figures in recent Dolphins memory. Fans hear that name and their blood pressure spikes. And I get it, I really do. But here's the thing, inside the locker room, it wasn't as one-sided as we imagined. Some guys actually liked him. They thought he prepared them well. And when it came to Kenny's take on Gase, especially how he got players game ready, well, Kenny had this to say.
We were always prepared, and it goes to the Miami Miracle. We had practice.
Oh my God.
We practiced that play every Saturday from the time Adam got there until we used it. Practice. And when we ran it in the game, it happened exactly like we practiced. And so you go to talk about people's creativity. You go to talk about, what they do as a coordinator. He had us prepared for every situation. And it showed, in one of the biggest moments in our history.
What fascinates me about Adam Gase is how wildly different our perception as fans can be from the guys who actually worked with him every day. To us, Gase is remembered for heartbreak and disappointment. But for a lot of his offensive players, they loved his system. And when things were humming, his offense was fun, fast, and guys genuinely enjoyed playing in it. That's the paradox, though. Maybe he just wasn't built to be a head coach. But as a coordinator, the man could flat out cook. I'll never forget when Seth sent me a picture from some event. It might have been a poker tournament, I don't remember. But I remember looking at it and thinking, wait, is that Adam Gase? And sure enough, it was. Apparently, he's still very active down there in the Miami community, showing up at events. He's still well received by the franchise. That's a reminder right there that just because we all wear the same logo doesn't mean we all see things the same way. Now, don't get me wrong. I wouldn't take him back as head coach, but I respect the man's offensive mind. I respect his play calling chops. And honestly, it's good to know he's still giving back down in Miami. Which brings us to his successor, Brian Flores. Now, say what you will about Flores, and believe me, Dolphins fans do. One thing is undeniable. His teams were disciplined, and I loved that about him. Case in point, the year he rolled out the infamous TNT wall. And listen, I'll die on this hill. The Dolphins hadn't been that disciplined since the Don Shula days. Look at the numbers. The year before the wall, penalty city. The year of the wall, penalties were slashed in half. Why? Accountability. That's been the buzzword of this offseason, hasn't it? Nobody wanted to stop what they were doing mid-practice to run over, touch a wall, and run back. So they cleaned it up. Because ultimately, what TNT stood for, takes no talent to do the little things correctly, ended up resonating. And it worked. Now, one thing I wish the episode had touched on, Dan Campbell's interim run after Joe Philbin got canned. Because if you were watching back then, you know, same roster, but a totally different team. Philbin's squad looked flat. Campbell's team, they looked like Detroit when he first took over. Tough, gritty, ready to run through walls, that's plural. And to Hell's Gate and back. The players loved that man. Honestly, I thought Campbell should have gotten the full-time job back then. And it's funny because when you look around the league now, there are two former Miami interim coaches, Campbell and Todd Bowles, who are head coaches elsewhere, and both of them are head coaches of playoff caliber teams. Miami's history is littered with what-ifs like that. As a matter of fact, I just found out that Tampa Bay's new offensive coordinator under Todd Bowles is a former wide receivers coach from Miami named Josh Grizzard. But back to Flores. Most of us respected the discipline that he brought. Not everyone wanted to turn into the Patriot South. But at that point, fans were just like, hey, let's just win, baby. Let's do it. Now here's the kicker. A lot of people didn't even notice it at the time, but Kenny actually had his own dust-up with Flores. And the wild part, it started over something completely silly and mundane, inane. Here's Kenny explaining it himself.
It all really started with him and I the first day of full padded practice. So we get out there and he comes running by the receivers and he's talking shit. He's like, I need to see which one of my receivers can block. I need to see which one of my receivers can block. And I'm like, he started talking trash and I'm like, so the door's open. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure I was on the front side of that Brandon Bolden run for 60 yards last year when we tapped that ass. And he did not like that. And so from that moment on, we had, a little bit of beef.
You gotta love the pettiness here. So much of this stuff is fueled entirely by ego. My wife cracked up when she heard it because honestly, it is funny. These are grown men, world-class athletes, some of the best football coaches on the planet, and yet half the time they're as sensitive as middle schoolers on Xbox Live. Like, really? You're heated because somebody joked about scoring on your defense? Bro, you started the trash talk. If you don't want it coming back your way, maybe don't open your mouth in the first place. I mean, this is football. We expect trash talk. What are we even doing here? But that's what makes Kenny's interview gold. He's honest, he's unfiltered, and he doesn't shy away from the messy stuff. The episode runs about an hour, and he drops all kinds of stories, some insightful, some hilarious, all of them worth your time. So do yourself a favor, go check it out on the Fish Tank Podcast YouTube channel. I'll link it up here somewhere. Go watch, go listen, and while you're at it, like, subscribe, drop a comment, do the whole shebang. I'm Sevach, this has been Tank Cleaning, and I'll see you next time.